Welcome back to the SHEThrives Influential Women podcast. I am your host, Lori Murphy, and I am an empowerment coach for women. And I'm also a public speaker as well as an award-winning published author. And it is so great to have all of you joining us today. This podcast is created for women to build a community, to be able to bring positive influence in our lives, and so that we can grow and thrive together. A little background on me for many of you that are new. I am a woman who has been sober from alcohol for just over 13 years, and my journey in recovery has led me down this amazing path of growth, healing, and self-discovery, which led me to my calling to be able to be of service to other women in all areas of their lives. And that is why this podcast was created, as another way to bring influential stories to you from amazing women like my latest guest, Suzanne. I'm so excited to be able to tell you about Suzanne. She is just a delight. Suzanne is a grieving mom who has found meaning in her loss through providing grief education, sharing how grief really works, and how we can support people experiencing it. Suzanne works with organizations and businesses to build the skills and protocols to better support people who are grieving at work. She is available as a speaker to share her story and to help normalize grief as a healthy response to loss, big and small. She has a BA and BED and decades of experience as a trainer. She is a certified grief education transformational coach and a workshop leader. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to Suzanne. How are you today?
I'm really well. Thank you so much for having me. It's so important that we have these conversations about grief in spaces where we're also talking about thriving, because I
Absolutely.
don't know that for many of us, we think of those two things going together. So I'm super excited for this conversation.
Oh, me too. And just by you saying that, I think to myself, it's like I think we don't realize how when we're carrying grief in a heavy heart, how much a lot of times that pain stays with us and debilitates us.
Mhm.
And it's almost like a roadblock, especially if we don't know how to, grieve in a healthy way, in a society that tells us to stuff it down and bury it, right? Like it's important to be able to have the education that in the guidance that you provide.
Yeah, it really is. Grievers are really faced with, as you say, a society that, first of all, around negative emotions at all is a lot about stuff it down. We're all excited to have joy, but nobody wants to talk about sorrow.
Mhm.
And it's a society that doesn't understand grief and is
Yes.
really scared of it
Mhm.
because somehow we think maybe it's catching or something. I'm not sure why we're so scared. I think we're so scared because we don't understand. And when we don't understand something, it feels scary. And then our language becomes all about, get like, aren't you over that yet? Like, aren't you finished? Like, haven't you moved on? Like, there's another there you could like they would want you, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so it becomes really difficult to find those safe spaces to really grieve in a way that allows, both the permission that we need to just be messy and confused and sad, all of the things, and to allow that possibility that, there's a transformational power in grief too.
Mhm.
You are going to be changed.
Yes.
So for me, when I'm working with my clients, our conversations are a lot about, okay, well, you're changed. And so now what? Like, do you want to do that from a victim mentality or do you want to do that from a growth mentality? Do you want to be as best you're able in any moment, which sometimes is not at all? And a
Mhm.
successful day is, you made it from the bed to the couch. But you're creating a new life
Mhm.
for yourself without this person or without this opportunity, without this business, without this job, whatever it is that you're grieving.
Mhm.
And we can do that intentionally and create something really beautiful that honors us and honors our loss.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. What I'd love to hear a little bit is about your story. I know that, in your bio, it states that you're a grieving mom. So I'm just guessing your grief has been what led you down your calling and your path of being able to help others. So if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit about who you are and how what led you to this work. I'd love to be able to hear that. And
Thank you. Yeah, I think I was going to say, like everyone, I don't know everyone in the grief space, but those that I know of, we're all here because we lost someone. Usually
Mhm.
it's about a person. And we had to figure out what to do. And that's exactly what happened to me. As a grieving mom, I lost my son Ben, died in September of 2020. So just over 4 years ago now.
I'm so sorry.
Um, and that loss, there's something about the out of order loss, the loss of a child, that for me really was next level. And grievers will understand how hampered we are by our lack of language. So, grievers will also understand when I say that in a weird way, I'm kind of grateful that Ben was not the first significant loss in my life. My dad had died 22 years earlier and my mom about 8 or 9.
Mm,
So it wasn't my first loss of someone that was that intrinsic in my life and someone who was that close to me. And I was still completely unprepared. I
mm,
didn't understand what was happening to me emotionally, physically. Grief is a full body experience as well that we
right.
don't talk about, all the physical things that happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
I was really a little bit scared. And I also knew that as a matter of survival, I had
Mm-hmm.
to do it full on. Like this, the whole stuffing that we're so good at, especially in Western culture, that was not going to be survivable. I had to allow all of the emotions, as uncomfortable and horrifying and disorienting and confusing as all of that was, and, sometimes still is.
Mm-hmm.
I had to allow it all. And I feel really grateful that I had this understanding very early, two things that really shaped how I chose to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
One was I knew almost instantly that the person who had gone to bed before I received that middle of the night phone call didn't exist anymore. Like that version of me was behind that veil of the before and the after.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to figure out who I was now, next, on in an ongoing way. And that in a weird way was devastating and helpful because when I
Mm-hmm.
realized that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, she no longer exists. So who am I now? Who do
Mm-hmm.
I want to be next? And the other thing that I just had this knowing from very early days was that I had to be conscious and curious. And this is really now the frame of everything that I do and how I work with clients and organizations and supporters and everything that I do. It really is conscious of all the emotions and allowing them all to be acceptable because, denial is a river in Egypt. It is not a long-term strategy around emotions, doesn't work. So just allowing them all to be acceptable and
Mm-hmm.
okay, even when they were horrifying and I didn't understand them and I couldn't make sense of them and they literally dropped me to my knees.
Mm-hmm.
And curious was about, who am I now? Was one of them for sure. And I remember one of the very earliest curiosities being about how when you're in those early days and you're sobbing so hard that all you can do is gasp,
Mm-hmm.
how do I oxygenate my body? Like just
Right.
knowing that I am not currently getting enough oxygen to my brain and my brain doesn't really work very well and it needs oxygen. And so how do I do that? And really, that was the beginning nugget of the curiosity that now has led me to become a grief educator and a trainer and a coach. And I just did my TEDx talk in January. So it will be out in the coming months. Like that curiosity is really what has led me sort of step by step, like what is possible? How do I survive this? What do I do next? And it really is baby step by baby step by baby step. Like we're not running, we're not doing anything fast. There's no sort of leaping ahead.
Right.
It's one baby step at a time. And sometimes those steps feel like they're going backwards, but every step is a path.
Yes.
Every step is movement. And really that's something critical that we need to understand is we have got to somehow in the slowest way, if that's all we can manage, keep moving and just
Mm-hmm.
keep allowing it and keep embracing it. It's this guest that we never invited to our party that now won't leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a guest at the party that we need to welcome and find a way to walk with because the grief doesn't go away. That's the misunderstanding that gets perpetuated every time we say to someone, oh, aren't you over it? Or that was 3 months ago. Like, you've had the funeral. Like, aren't you done? Like, you're supposed to be moving on. Like, that's not how it works. We carry it with us. We carry our person with us or whatever we are leaving,
Mm-hmm.
whatever we have lost, whether it's a business or an opportunity or a job or a home or, there's so much loss all around us, our sense of stability, so many things that have changed. And we're going to carry that loss with us. I carry Ben with me every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to leave him behind. And the subtext of all of that language is that somehow they're supposed to stay in the past somewhere behind us. And none of
Mm-hmm.
us wants that. So it really is about, how do we carry them with us? Yes, in our cherished memories, as, gets trotted out, but, at least you have these wonderful memories. I'm like, that's cold comfort. But it's how do we keep them present? How do
Yeah.
we, have a laugh when we see something that reminds us of them? Or how do we share a memory with a friend and have a conversation about what was important about them? How
Mm-hmm.
do we craft a life that honors the life that they lived, if there's someone who lived to be a ripe old age and had lived a really full life, or the life that they could have, should have lived, when it's a young person like Ben. So for me, it's all about that intentionality and
Mm-hmm.
not, at the beginning, you just feel like flotsam and jetsam under the ocean. That's what I felt like anyway. It's
Yeah.
horrifying. You can't breathe, that you're suffocated. It's awful. And that doesn't last forever. And then what? When we
Right.
are no longer just trying to breathe
Yeah.
and being curious about how on earth we even do that, then what? We're not supposed to be still. We're supposed to be in movement, and it's incremental and it's tiny steps at a time, but we're in movement somehow.
Right. Now, I don't think that there's any way to prepare for such a difficult loss, whether your child is sick or something happens where you get a phone call in the middle of the night. That had to have been traumatic to wake up to that type of phone call. How old was Ben?
Ben was 22. So really like on the cusp of all the things,
Yeah.
as you are at 22. And
Yeah.
yes, absolutely traumatic. And there's still a life to be lived and it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter still has a life to live. And all of the other people that loved him still have lives to live. So, how do we do that while honoring, our loved one who's no longer here? And for me, it's interesting when people ask me, what can I do to prepare myself? Is there anything I can do to prepare myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really very aware that I was already on a growth journey. And I
Mm-hmm.
already lived really from that growth mindset. And I'm very grateful for that because that really did shape how I navigated all of the horror of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, so being in that kind of, way of approaching our life is very helpful because if we're
Mm-hmm.
already in a victim mentality, it will knock us further into that, right? And that's not a healthy place for anyone to be operating from.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing we can do to prepare ourselves is really learn about grief and have conversations about it with people who are grieving and learn from each other. And when it comes to those big losses, like the loss of a loved one, pets fall in that category as well. For so many people, that's their, living thing they come home to is their furry friend.
Mm-hmm.
We can prepare ourselves in a way for those big losses by more honestly navigating the smaller ones.
Right.
And by having richer conversations around, we're surrounded by loss all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Change brings loss, loss brings grief.
Yes.
If you think about it that way, we're in forms of grief most of the time. But we don't label it as that because we're scared of grief and we don't want to be doing it.
Right.
So we don't want to call it that, but that's really what's happening. And there's
Hmm.
a really rich opportunity there for us to learn and start to have conversations and figure out for ourselves what we want to say to someone
Sure.
who's experienced a loss or what practical support we might offer. Because someone like me, especially in those early days as a grieving mother, grieving out loud, I was crying and grieving every place. Like if you asked me how I was, I would tell you. Like you best be careful because I would tell you. And I know that that was terrifying and uncomfortable for most people I encountered. I'm not a good first assignment. But if you've had the ability to take advantage of those opportunities to have conversations around grief when it's happening, over losses other than the loss of a loved one, or when those loved one losses happen, to say something other than that cliche or platitude or, thing that you've said. If you have one thing you say to every person who's grieving, it's time to let that go.
Right.
Because
And,
there's nothing about that that's genuine and appropriate to this particular circumstance.
right. And there's so many questions that I have centered around like the grieving process because I feel like, we have discussed, like there's like this idea of how, okay, like you had mentioned before, it's been a month, you've already had the
Yeah.
funeral. Like, so why is there this idea that there's a timeline on how long a person should grieve?
I think the myth that lives in society in our culture is based in fear. We are uncomfortable and we are scared, and so we want you to be over it.
Yeah.
Because
Because it
until you're
makes you
over it, you make
uncomfortable.
me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And that is what's so interesting to me if you break down the subtext of almost all of those cliches, right? He would want you to be happy. Well, he's not here. How do you know? And maybe he wouldn't.
Right.
And it's you that want me to be happy. It's you who are uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Right. And so I think that's where a bunch of that sense comes from. We are conditioned and enculturated to want people to be happy.
Hmm.
And when we are not happy, that means there's something wrong,
Hmm.
which is the biggest myth that we get, and I'm sure you work with this with your clients, in this, Thrive
Yeah.
space. I fully believe we are actually here to be uncomfortable. I don't
Yes.
think anything about this human experience is supposed to be comfortable.
And that's the truth. There's a lot of truth to that. And sometimes like I'll get hard on myself. Like, why is this like we lost my grandmother, for example, about a year and a half ago. And I still have moments where it sneaks up on me. Right.
Absolutely.
Or my aunt, who her and I were very close. She was my best friend. And in my 20s, she passed away from stage 4 melanoma. And to this day, it'll that, I'm 42 now and I still think about her all the time and I still grieve her. But
Yeah.
I also don't believe that they left
Mm.
because
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like I can like feel them with me and feel them celebrating with me all the good times and comforting me in those dark times, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I'm like you in the sense of I still believe that they're still with me, that they're not past tense, they're not gone.
Yeah.
But I
And,
also know that the grief
whatever your
process
belief
has been
system.
messy.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have a different belief system about what happens sort of after the person has died.
Hmm.
Whether you go with the pure science, that is, their energy, goes back into the energetic sphere and bounces around. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes that thought gives me comfort. I'm like, no, like literally the science tells us that the energetic of this person never goes.
Yeah.
So somewhere out, who knows where, Ben's energy, my dad's energy, my mom's energy, my aunt, my uncle, so many people have friends, that
Yeah.
have died. Like their energy is all there somewhere. And if your belief system is that their soul, that their energy stays as a unit and goes somewhere else or comes back here or whatever it is, there are, regardless of all of that, and maybe because of all of that, there are still ways that we feel them with us.
Yes.
And whether it's that, I did a workshop before the holidays about sort of particular care that grievers need over the holidays. And one of the participants was coming to learn more about being a great supporter and also was a griever, which is often how this works. And she was saying it was, it was their first Christmas without her grandma. And she had the vest that her grandma had worn every Christmas, like for forever. And so she's like, yep, I'm going to wear the vest and we're making some of the cookies. Like they had a whole plan for how they were going to navigate and how to have, that's a way we have that person's presence there, right? Someone has the vest on. We've made, we found the recipes and made the cookies. We've lit a candle. We've set a place at the table. We've all shared a memory. There's as many people on the planet, there's more than that ways we can do this because it's going to be different for each of us and it's going to be different for each community that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
But finding those ways to create those rituals so that we're keeping that person with us, even though they're not physically here anymore. And whatever has happened to their soul, their life essence, their energy, I don't know. I hope to not find out for many, many more years. And no matter what that is, I want to feel Bryn with me. I want to feel my dad at times. I want to reach out to my mom and hear her voice in my head saying, giving me the advice that she would have given me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually a really healthy way to reach integration, which ultimately is the goal. We don't want to get over it. We don't want to move on. We're trying to move forward with.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this concept of integration, which is that we get to a place where we think of our loved one with more love than pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet for you with your aunt, it's now 22 years later,
Mm-hmm.
there are going to be moments of pain. There are going to be moments still where it feels like a dagger to the heart
Mm-hmm.
that she's not here. And more often, it feels like this warm embracing of love.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's times where it's just like I really just wish if I could just hear her voice or hear her laughter, you
Yeah.
know. Um any of my loved ones, right? But it like with like my aunt, it was just like, oh, I'd give anything just to hear her laugh. And it's like, but then there's times where it's just like I feel like I can. Like it's like there's just something that's not, it's like that missing piece actually isn't, there's no missing piece. It's like there's a
Yeah.
wholeness there. And it depends on, I think where I'm at,
Hmm.
mentally or emotionally and just, but I think like there's ways that we find comfort in that grief,
Hmm.
and I think if it's, lighting the candle or, having a place set at the table or making their cookies. Like for me, my microphone's blocking it, but
Oh, I love it.
those are the foremost, those are my cat. One of them is my aunt. One of them's, I have two grandmothers up there, and actually my Aunt Betty, who is my father's aunt, and they
Mhm.
were four women that influenced me in such a positive way throughout my life. And I put them there on display to, so, because those are my influential women, right?
Yeah.
What I learned from them in my life over years of throughout my life never left me and have stayed with me. And that brings me comfort.
Yeah. And that's part of how we keep them alive, right? We
Mhm.
remember that, oh, that lesson came from this aunt, or that lesson came from this grandmother, or that lesson came from my dad, or my son, or my daughter, or my cousin, or whoever it is, my dear friend. And that's the gift that they give us on an ongoing basis,
Yeah.
is that we can still access all of those things and still be so grateful. It's the both and of grief. I remember
Mhm.
saying to my daughter in the very, very early days that we were going to become masters at holding paradox because it's the both and, right? It's the incredible gratitude that you had them in your life alongside the devastation that they're not still here. And those things are happening at the same time.
Yeah. And and then there's the whole how we grieve, right?
Mhm.
Like some of us grieve out loud, that they are not afraid to voice that I'm hurting right now, or their cries are loud. And that there's others who silence their grief because they feel that, it's there's something wrong with how you grieve.
Yeah.
And what can you say? to someone who might be like, afraid to really grieve the way their body is leading them to? Like how would you suggest them to go through that process?
Yeah. The one universal about grief, which is different every time for each of us, is that it needs to be witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're feeling like you're supposed to do it all on your own and it's supposed to be this quiet thing that just like will happen through some kind of magic,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Culture, our society, the people around you would probably be much happier if it did, but it doesn't. So the critical thing really is to find those safe places where you can grieve out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily going to be with the person who you thought was closest to you. They might
Mm-hmm.
have stepped back. But if you're open to it, someone else might have stepped forward and you're just not seeing that yet, or you're just not allowing them to step in.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully you can find that in your circle of people, right, around you. And if you can't, then you need to hunt it out. So you
Yes.
need to find, people like me, or, there's so many groups and organizations that offer free things or low cost things or one-on-one things, whatever it is, whatever you feel like will help you, try
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
You cannot do it on your own. It has to be witnessed.
Yes. I
And,
agree.
I knew for my survival, I just was going to be witnessed by anybody who gave me any kind of opening. But that's not the path for everyone. And I get that.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting, for me that I chose to grieve out loud. That was my path to survival. My daughter grieved much more privately and much more quietly. And that worked for her. Both
Mm-hmm.
are fine. And anything in between those is fine.
Mm-hmm.
The thing you can't do is try and do it by yourself
Right.
and try and do it with no information because we don't know enough. So find, if you don't want to talk to anybody, find a Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
Be a looker. I send clients all the time to specific Facebook groups that I just know have really good content. And I'm like, you never have to post in there. It doesn't matter. But you will hear other people's stories and then you feel less alone.
Mm-hmm.
You hear other people's experiences, or someone will ask a question that you didn't even know you had
Mm-hmm.
and you find out something new. That's where I started because I still struggle to read nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
So people are like, oh, you need this book. Oh, you need this thing. I was like, well, that's great. But my brain cannot formulate long, complicated sentences. That just doesn't do that.
Yeah.
But find some way to get information
Yeah.
because we don't know enough. As a collective, we don't know enough about how it works and what happens in our body. That's totally normal. When my body basically rebelled against me, right? My muscles were weak. I could barely stand up. Like if I was standing up, I was okay. But if I was sitting down, I had to be completely supported by whatever chair I was in. Now I can actually sit forward in a chair, but I couldn't at the beginning. My body would literally not hold itself up.
Mm-hmm.
Totally normal.
Yeah.
Happens to lots of us. But
Yeah.
if you don't know that, it's really worrisome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your digestion has run amok. You're either sleeping too much or not at all, and none of it's restful. Your brain fog is intense and worrisome, right? Your brain just does not work.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is normal.
Yeah.
Pain, um, literally heart pain in your heart, pain in numbing in your extremities. Like there's all kinds of things that physically happen to us and that are happening in our brain on top of all the emotional stuff that we've been taught to stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're ill-equipped,
Yeah.
which is why part of, if there's any way to be prepared is to have a little bit more understanding of what might happen
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit more comfort with being uncomfortable
Sure.
because there's a lot of uncomfortable coming your way. And
Mm-hmm.
then figuring out and then just really trusting your instinct
Right.
and really trusting, like, is this person a safe place for me to be out loud?
Mm-hmm.
Is this someone who can witness? Have they shown me they could just sit still beside me while I talk and not try and fix it and not tell me everything's going to be okay and not tell me how strong I'm being and
Yeah.
not tell me how great I'm doing, but just be there to be a witness.
Because sometimes we don't need advice. We don't need anybody to say anything. We just need to be able to process what we're feeling inside, where our thoughts are, just to be able to talk it out and just have that safe space, just to be able to say, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm feeling. I'm not looking for much else. It's just to be able to have somebody listen.
Yeah. And I love how gentle you're being in saying that, like, sometimes we don't want your advice. I'm going to be a little bit bolder. We
Hmm.
don't want your advice,
Yeah. Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
If we ask a question, please feel free to answer to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
We have not asked you a question as a griever. I don't want your advice. And I remember, and I knew it was coming from the best of intentions. People trying to draw parallels with something that had happened in their life or telling me about what happened. And I was like, I don't care. Unless you have lost a child in similar circumstances at a similar age, and even then, I'm not sure I care.
Yeah.
But if you lost a dog or a aged parent or a whatever it was, like that felt so irrelevant to what I was experiencing in
Hmm.
those early days.
Hmm.
I didn't care. And now I have a much broader understanding of how many parallels there are and how much really grief is grief is grief.
Hmm.
And we don't want your advice.
Yeah.
We have to chart our own path and our own way of doing it. And what we need is your support for us to do that.
Yeah.
To not tell us we're doing it wrong, to not tell us, we should be doing something different, to not tell us we should be over it, to be saying things like, wow, I can hear that you're really going through something.
Hmm.
Is there anything else you want to tell me?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes like I'll tell if I'm with a client or somebody that I know personally that they're going through a loss and they're grieving. Sometimes I'll just say, you know, if it's especially if it's something that I don't understand, I won't pretend to. And I'll let them know, I'm like, I have not been in this situation, so I can only imagine what you're going through. I go, I might not have much to say to comfort you, but I am here to listen,
Yeah.
because sometimes there's nothing that can be said that's going to
No,
comfort someone.
there's no
Sometimes
perfect words. You can't fix.
in my experience, the last thing I want is for somebody to try to tell me to get over it or somebody to tell me that, uh, something I already might already know, like, or give me some kind of advice. Like, that's not what I need right now. What I need is for you to just listen, like, say
Yeah.
nothing. So that's what I try to provide for people because I know that there's nothing, no words that are going to fix the pain that you're going through.
No, and we're not broken. Like there really is nothing here to be fixed.
Yeah.
This is a natural, normal human response to loss.
Yeah.
And for us to sort of frame that as something that's fixable
Hmm.
is a foundational problem
Yeah.
that like, we think it's something we're supposed to help the person fix.
Yeah.
We're not fixing it.
Yeah.
We're learning to live with it. We're learning who we are now. We're learning what our capacities are at this moment and how they might be different the next moment.
Hmm.
But we don't need to be fixed.
Yeah.
We're not broken. We feel, as the griever, we feel shattered to pieces,
Yeah.
but we're not really broken in a way that you can fix it.
I remember my grandmother. My grandfather passed away about year and a half before she did. And I remember we were at his wake and she she said, I know this is a strange question. She asked for photos to be taken
Mhm.
of my
Yeah.
grandfather's, the flowers and all of and the casket. And I very happily took those pictures for her without judgment. And I don't, I think there might have been some others who didn't feel that it was appropriate. And I was like, I don't care. And when I brought her the photos, I went and I had them printed out and I brought them to her. She said, I know that that was bad of me. I know I shouldn't have asked that. But I'm like, Granny, he was your husband. As we called her Granny and Grampy. Those are my grandparents. I said, Granny, that was
Yeah.
your husband for, 60 years. And I'm like, there's no right or wrong way to grieve here. And if this is the one thing I can do for you that might help you along that process, she goes, I won't put them out for anyone to see. You could put them on the fireplace mantle for all I care. Do you? You know what I mean? And I'm like, this is for you. This isn't about anyone else. And how you grieve this is your journey.
Yeah.
And she appreciated that so much because she needed that.
Yeah. And I hadn't actually thought about it, but that's a genius thing to do for someone to take those pictures because her instinct, what she knew, which is so true, is that she wouldn't remember. And she wanted to know what it had looked like.
Yeah, because it was. it was set up so beautifully. The flowers were beautiful. And I think she just wanted that remembrance of that was how he was honored in the end.
Yes. Yes. This is how we honored him. We did right by him. And, on some instinctual level, she probably understood that she wasn't going to remember, that it would
Yeah.
all be, that day would be a blur.
Yeah.
And so to have that way to be able to go, oh yeah, like we did do it right.
Hmm.
What a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're someone who is supporting someone who's grieving and you're going to the service, take the pictures so
Yeah.
that if they ever ask for them, you have them. Or you could say to them, oh, I took some pictures in case you ever want them, or in case you ever want to remember.
Yeah.
I have some.
Yeah.
That's an amazing gift. I had not, oh, I love it. I learned something new today. Excellent. I love it.
Yeah.
But it's those kinds of things that we don't think about, right? And that there is this weird stigma. Like, why would you not take those pictures?
right. I think
Why,
like I think there were some people who didn't know she asked that, and they saw me with my cell phone taking pictures, and I kind of felt I could feel the like, what is
yeah,
she? I'm like, I don't care. My grandmother wants this. I don't care. This is what's
yeah.
helping her.
But
Let them
what's
judge.
we all the time, if it was a wedding or a christening or anything happy that was happening in that space,
Hmm.
everybody would be taking pictures.
Yeah.
Or they would have said, oh, we have an official photographer. Please, be present with us and don't take pictures or something. There would have been a conversation about pictures.
Hmm.
But because it's a funeral or a celebration of life, whatever you were having, there's this weird stigma around wanting to memorialize that, which we just need to break down.
Hmm.
Because why wouldn't we want to remember that? Why wouldn't that give her comfort? That makes perfect sense to me
Yeah.
that would give her comfort.
Yeah.
That being able to see, yeah, you know what? She's got the book where people signed, so she knows all these people came. And then she's got the visual reminder of like, we did it upright. Like we did everything we could to give
Yeah.
him this kind of send off and this memorial moment.
Yeah. And
Absolutely, that would be comforting for sure.
yeah. And I'm glad that we were able to get that for her because,
Yeah,
especially because I know she grieved that. It was hard for her, losing her partner of all those
absolutely.
years. And, regardless of their marriage and the good or the bad that came with it, it was the between them.
Yeah,
So um
yeah, amazing.
yeah. And one of and I'm kind of shifting gears here because one of the things that I received, with your bio was Grief 101,
Mhm.
understanding the basics, you know, defining grief and, the symptoms of what grief is. Can we dive a little bit in that? And
Yeah,
so it's for someone who's just trying to navigate it and they don't really have the full like what the basics of
yeah,
understanding.
yeah. I think this is the foundation we all need to be able to both grieve in a way that's healthy and to show up for people in a way that's meaningful. Because if we don't understand it, we don't even know what we're trying to support someone through, right?
Hmm.
So we've talked a little bit about some of it, but it really is that understanding that it is a full body experience. So what's happening in your body is real and it's normal. And this is important for supporters to understand because so often they will kind of brush those symptoms away or they'll think there's like something wrong with you or like, I was listening in on a conversation recently where someone was talking about her sister and her sister's husband had died. And so she was going to wherever they lived, wasn't where she lived. She went there to go support her sister and for the funeral. And when she got there, it was like the day before or 2 days before, whatever. And she said to her sister, what can I do? What do you need done? And her sister said, oh, I don't have a dress yet. Will you come with me and help me find a dress? And this supporter was appalled that she hadn't got the dress yet. And as the griever listening in, I'm going, oh, that totally makes sense because her brain has no capacity to go to a mall, to like get fully dressed, to go be nice to a salesperson. No, I need support with that. And probably had not even thought about it with all the things she's trying to get done and do to have this service come together.
Hmm.
But that's the thing is if as a supporter you understand that there are things going on in our body, our digestive system is messed up, our sleep cycle destroyed, our muscular system, like the way that our muscles operate gets disrupted. Our relationship with time really complicated. So if you can support someone getting to places on time or remembering things they're supposed to do at a certain time, that could be really helpful support. And then the brain fog, the brain is literally reprogramming itself
Mm.
because I mean, I could nerd out about this for hours. I won't. Enough to say the pathways in your brain that know that person is there, that have a sense of where they are, that are remembering a funny story to tell them when you see them again, all have to be rewired.
Mm.
Because what it felt like in my brain was that I would be on that pathway and then it would hit and I know this is not how the brain is set up. It's okay. I would be on that pathway and I would like hit the pathway that knows Ben is not here anymore. And it was like a little frizz in my brain all the time. It was like, oh yeah, like I can't go home and tell him this story. I can't tell him I saw this trailer for a movie that I think we should go to together. I can't pick up, I mean, I can, but I don't need to pick up his favorite groceries because he's not there to eat them.
Mm.
So it's that reprogramming that's happening with our brain at the same time as I believe it's a little bit protecting us from the knowledge of what has really happened.
Mhm.
So the early days, it's really up to 5 years, and I am giving myself a lot of grace. I keep hoping I'm in the last year of the brain fog. I don't think I am. I have a whole theory about what happens as that time progresses, but it's for many years that our brain is fuzzy and that we need other skills. I've never relied on GPS so much in my entire life. I've lived in the city I live in for almost 50 years.
Mhm.
I know my way around very well. I could not find my way from here to somewhere I went all the time. Like my spatial awareness, a total mess. So that sense that there's stuff going on in people besides the emotional part. We're
Mhm.
uncomfortable enough with the emotional part and we don't know anything about the other stuff. So that understanding there really are physical things going on. There's nothing wrong with the person. You need to help them understand this is probably normal. You go do the research, find out for them if it's normal or not. Google, ChatGPT, I don't care, find out. Um, and then the other thing that's really important for people to understand is the actual timeline. We all have this sense that, once that service has happened, like, should all be winding down. Like, aren't we done now? You are, yes. And I get that you are going to step back into your regular life and things will proceed as normal. For the griever, that is months and months and months till anything feels normal. That acute earliest phase for most people is the first 6 to 9 months where
Mhm.
they are really in the weeds. They're struggling, their brain doesn't work, their body feels weird, they can't sleep, they can't eat, or they do both too much. Whatever it is, it's all out of whack.
Mhm.
That's the first 6 to 9 months. That's the acute phase. Early grief is about those first 2 years. Right. So those of us who understand ish a timeline often feel like after that first year, like, oh, that first year is so hard. Yes. And for me and others as well, that second year is even harder
Mm.
in different ways. I'm just going to pause because my daughter's coming in and the dog is going to bark. That's okay. Can you take him with you? And then we'll just cut this out somehow. The magic of editing will go chop. Okay. Um, for many people, that second year is even harder. It's different than the first one in that you're not as much in survival mode,
Mhm.
and the symptoms of the physical symptoms have calmed down a little bit. But that knowing that reality is so much stronger that the person isn't, that they're not coming back. This isn't, nothing is changing.
Mhm.
They're not going to be there for Christmas. They're not going to be there for their birthday. They're not going to be there for your birthday. Like whatever it is you would have celebrated, like that second year is really, really hard. So that early phase, still needing support the first 2 years. And then we move into mature grief, which really is the rest of our life part, right? Where even for me, it's 4 years later. For you, it's 22 years later. I'm thrilled. Anytime someone tells me a story that they remember about Ben or that they saw something that made them think of him, that's a gift to me
Mhm.
because I will be grieving his loss forever for the rest of my life. It's not going to go away. It's different. It doesn't absorb every waking moment of my day
Right.
as it used to. It's now a constant undercurrent. It's not the only thing I can think and talk about, which it was for a long time.
Mhm.
And it's still very much a part of my life.
Yes.
And that's normal,
Yeah.
right? Them being behind us, we've moved on, we're over it. That's the abnormal. That's the myth. The normal is I carry him with me. I have ways I remember him on purpose. I get smacked with things that remind me of him I that I can't control. Sometimes it's a wave, sometimes it's a tsunami. All of those things are normal.
And I think that that's the one key thing that everyone at some point in their grieving process has to understand that it's all normal,
Yeah.
and what you do to keep their memory alive and to move through that is, there's no right or wrong way. But if you want to
No.
grieve in a healthy way, it's the way to do that is to not be alone and to
Yeah.
utilize a support system with those that you feel safe and comfortable with, that you feel that you can grieve out loud if you need to.
Yeah. And to really connect deeply with yourself and what you need.
Yeah.
This is really the biggest work that I do with my clients is this is the time where you need to be the best, most healthy version of selfish because this is your journey.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what anybody else thinks about how you're doing it, that's none of your business.
Right.
Your business is to figure out what is right for you because you will get unsolicited advice from friends, colleagues, bosses, experts, whoever that doesn't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to listen to it, measure it, do it or not, because it's what works for you. Like there are so many people that will say, oh, you should take their pictures down. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that? That doesn't
Right.
make any sense to me at all. I put pictures up. I didn't have very many pictures of Ben in the apartment because he didn't really like having his picture out. I'm like, well, you're on now. I'm putting all these pictures up because it gives me comfort. If that made me feel worse, that wouldn't be the right thing for me.
Right.
But for me, for you, it's the right thing to have those four amazing, powerful women literally at your back,
Yeah.
literally on your shoulder, going, go, you can do this. I've got you, whatever it is, giving you advice, hearing their voices. That
100%.
is really powerful for you. If it's
Mm-hmm.
not powerful for you, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to get deeply in touch with yourself
Yeah.
and what is right for you. And that's the hardest part because we've been so conditioned, especially as women, to be good girls and to not be a burden and to not, make people uncomfortable.
It's not our
No,
responsibility to make other people comfortable. It's
no,
really not. Their
I would say their
uncomfortability
discomfort is not your fault.
is not your problem. And I also try to, I mean, there's times I have to remember that myself, but I have, I will tell people that like it's not your responsibility to make them uncomfortable. If this is
No,
something that feels right for you, that's what you have to go by, but that's what you have to follow,
yeah,
you
100%.
know, because
Finding that sureness and that trust in yourself when your whole world has shattered and when maybe the person you confided in the most and gave you the best advice and was your rock is the person who has died, that's hard work.
yeah.
And it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah. And I could sit here and ask you more questions, but I know that we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So for those who have questions that want to hear more from you, or if they're going through their own grieving process and they feel they don't have that support and they need it, how can
Mhm.
they find you, Suzanne?
The best place to go is to my website, which is SuzanneJabour.com. Super easy to find. And you can find me, you can go there and then link to all the socials, but I'm easy to find on social media because I'm the only Suzanne Jabour. It's very handy. Very grateful to my parents. So yeah, find me there, reach out. You can get onto my calendar on my website if you need to have a call and figure out what step is right for you next. I have all kinds of workshops on the go. I run a meetup group, a grief cafe free meetup group for people that just need to come and be witnessed. So there's all kinds of, ways to get support from one-on-one grieving to me coming as a speaker to your organization to help you as a community do better. Whatever it is, there's all kinds of ways to get the help that you need. And you just have to take that first step.
Awesome. And I will be sure because I do have links for you. And I'll
Perfect.
be sure to provide that information also in the description of this podcast. And for those that are listening, if there's any way I can be of, service in your journey, you can always find me. You can find me on Facebook under Lori A. Murphy, Empowerment Coach for Women. You can also find me on my website, LoriMurphyCoaching.com. All of those links will also be provided. And I also would like to invite all of you, especially you, Suzanne, if you are on Facebook, I do have a private free community for women called the SHEThrives. Actually, it's called SHEThrives Together. In this group, we celebrate each other's wins. We give support. I try to be sure to get on top of celebrating birthdays, provide live content, trainings, all the things. I will also be putting that link in the description as well. I would love to be able to see this community grow so that we can all continue to love, support, and thrive together. Um, but until then, Suzanne, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to talk to us about this very important topic.
Thank you so much for opening the space. We all need this knowledge and we can thrive so much better when we have it.
Absolutely. And I hope that, we're recording on a Saturday Saturday morning for you because you're
Yep.
in Canada.
I'm on the West Coast. Yeah.
Oh my God. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. And until next time, everybody, let go of fear and let your spirit shine.